The family hospital will be entrusted to your brother, my father announced during the board meeting. His words echoed through the mahogany-paneled conference room of Mitchell Medical Center, where countless executive decisions had been made over the past 30 years. He understands our medical legacy. My mother, elegant in her tailored suit that spoke of years of charitable galas and hospital fundraisers, nodded in agreement. We believe this is for the best, Evelyn dear. They had no idea that while they were giving away what should have been my inheritance, I had quietly built a healthcare empire worth 10 times more. When they finally found out, "I think you should sit down for this," my father said, his voice carrying that familiar authoritative tone that always preceded difficult diagnoses. I was already seated at the massive conference table where we'd held countless board meetings and medical staff reviews over the past 3 decades. My name is Evelyn Mitchell, and at 38, I was about to discover just how little my parents understood about both medicine and me. The hospital had been in our family for 4 generations. The sprawling medical complex, with its state-of-the-art facilities and renowned trauma center, was more than just a hospital. It embodied our family's commitment to healthcare excellence. I'd spent my residency years in these halls, learning every department, dreaming of the day I'd lead the institution into a new era of medical innovation. Your mother and I have been discussing the hospital's future, my father continued, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses in that nervous way he had. We've decided it's best if it goes to Nathan. Nathan, my younger brother by 3 years, had never shown any real passion for medicine beyond using his position in medical device sales to impress potential dates. I maintained my composure, years of delivering difficult news to patients serving me well. "I see," I said quietly, taking a sip of water to mask whatever emotion might have flickered across my face. "It's for the best, dear," my mother added, reaching across the polished table as if to pat my hand. I subtly moved it away, placing it in my lap. "Nathan has such grand plans for the hospital, and you're always so busy with your little healthcare projects." Little healthcare projects. That's what they called the hospital network I'd built from scratch over the past decade. While Nathan had bounced from one medical device startup to another, I'd been methodically building something substantial, something they'd never bothered to understand. Nathan understands the importance of traditional medical values, my father continued, gaining confidence from my silence. He'll preserve the hospital's legacy exactly as it should be. I thought about the 5 hospitals I now owned across 3 states, each one a failing institution I'd transformed into a center of medical excellence. While they assumed I was just running small clinics, they had no idea that my newest medical center's emergency department alone handled more trauma cases in a month than their entire hospital did in a year. "When did you make this decision?" I asked, my voice steady with the same calm I used when explaining complex procedures to anxious patients. Well, my mother shifted uncomfortably in her ergonomic chair. "We've been thinking about it for some time. Nathan's been having some challenges with his medical device sales lately, and with Rebecca's pregnancy." Ah, there it was. Nathan had found himself in another professional predicament, and my parents were rushing to his rescue once more. The fact that his girlfriend, a nurse in our pediatric ward, was expecting added urgency to their decision. "I've dedicated my entire career to understanding this hospital," I said carefully. "I know every department, every protocol, every improvement needed in our patient care systems." "That's exactly why Nathan needs it more than you do," my father interrupted. "You're already established. You have your projects. Nathan needs a fresh start. A fresh start. Like the fresh start they'd given him when he lost their investment in that AI diagnostic startup, or the fresh start after his failed medical device distribution venture, or the robotic surgery company that never made it past the planning stage." I stood up slowly, smoothing down my white coat. "Thank you for telling me," I said in my perfectly controlled voice. "I have rounds to make." Evelyn, my mother called after me. Don't be difficult about this. It's what's best for the hospital. I turned back, allowing myself one small moment of satisfaction. I understand completely, I replied. You're right. I do have my hospitals to focus on. As I left the conference room, I pulled out my phone and made a call. Dr. Thompson, proceed with the merger proposal. Yes, all of it. My family didn't know that I'd spent the last 5 years quietly acquiring every major medical practice and specialty center in the region. The little healthcare projects they dismissed had given me control of the entire metropolitan healthcare network. While they focused on preserving their single hospital's traditions, I was revolutionizing patient care across the state. The next few weeks passed in a blur of surgical procedures and board meetings. I threw myself into work, finalizing plans that had been in motion for months. Probably relieved by my apparent acceptance of their decision, my parents barely contacted me, except for the occasional group text about Nathan's impending fatherhood. Then came the day of the formal announcement. My parents had arranged a hospital gala, with champagne and their usual circle of medical society friends, the perfect setting to crown their golden child publicly. I arrived exactly on time, dressed in a tailored black dress that probably cost more than Nathan's monthly salary. Not that they would notice or care. Evelyn, my mother called out, rushing over with a glass of champagne. I'm so glad you could make it. Nathan was worried you might not come. I accepted the glass with the same smile I used when reassuring nervous patients. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Nathan was holding court near the hospital's donor wall, his pregnant girlfriend Rebecca beside him. He'd at least tried to look professional, though his suit seemed a bit tight around the middle. Sis, he called out when he saw me. Come here, I want to tell you about my plans for the cardiology department. I walked over, knowing how our parents beamed at this display of sibling harmony. Nathan launched into an elaborate description of his vision for the hospital, which mainly involved expensive equipment purchases and flashy technological upgrades with little regard for actual patient care protocols. Sounds fascinating, I said when he finally paused for breath. I have some news of my own to share. My father clinked his glass, gathering everyone's attention. Before that, I have an announcement to make. He cleared his throat, adopting his most distinguished chief of surgery pose. As you all know, this hospital has served our community for generations. Today, I'm proud to announce that it will pass to my son, Nathan, who will carry on our family's medical legacy. Applause filled the grand hall. Nathan puffed up like a resident who'd just completed his first successful surgery, while Rebecca clutched his arm, practically glowing with pride. Thank you, my father continued. Nathan has some exciting plans for modernizing our facilities, and we're confident he'll be an excellent steward of our hospital's heritage. I waited for the applause to die down before speaking. That's wonderful news, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room. And it ties in perfectly with my announcement. My mother's smile faltered slightly. She knew that tone in my voice, the same one I used before delivering unexpected diagnoses. As you all know, I've been working on some healthcare initiatives in the region, I continued. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Mitchell Healthcare Group will be launching next month. A $500 million integrated healthcare network that will transform medical care across the entire metropolitan area. The room went silent. My father's champagne glass froze halfway to his mouth. The network will include 5 major hospitals, 12 specialty centers, and a state-of-the-art medical research facility, I continued, pulling out my phone to project the organizational charts onto the wall. We've acquired all the major healthcare facilities in the region over the past 5 years. The entire medical landscape will be revolutionized. The images showed a comprehensive healthcare system that would dwarf our family hospital. In the presentations, the Mitchell Medical Center looked antiquated compared to the modern facilities that would surround it. But, but that will completely change the medical landscape, my mother stammered. That's the point, I replied smoothly. Healthcare evolution is inevitable. The region needs integrated care, and Mitchell Healthcare Group is proud to lead that change. You can't do this, Nathan burst out. This is our family's hospital. I turned to him, raising an eyebrow with the same clinical detachment I used in difficult consultations. I can, and I will. All the mergers are approved. The funding is secured, and operations begin next month. But don't worry, you'll have a front row seat to watch healthcare innovation from your new office. My father had gone pale, the color of a patient in shock. Evelyn, we should discuss this. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. This is business. Just like your decision about the hospital was business. I raised my glass. To progress in patient care. The room erupted into chaos. Doctors whispered among themselves. Nathan started arguing loudly with our father about market competition, and my mother looked like she needed a dose of anxiety medication. I slipped out quietly, but not before hearing one of the board members mutter, "Did you know her medical group was worth that much?" In my car, I finally allowed myself a small smile. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Thompson. Joint Commission accreditation confirmed for all facilities. Everything on schedule. I typed back a quick response. Perfect. Time to show them what my little healthcare projects can do. The family hospital might have been my childhood dream, but I'd built something far better. A healthcare empire of my own, on my terms. And this was just the beginning. As I drove away from the hospital that was supposed to be my inheritance, I felt lighter than I had in years. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting what you wanted. It's showing everyone that you never needed it in the first place. The next morning, the calls started pouring in before I finished my morning rounds. The caller ID showed my father's number for the third time in an hour, so I sent it to voicemail and focused instead on the patient charts on my desk. Dr. Mitchell, my assistant, Sarah, poked her head in. Your brother is in the lobby. He's quite insistent about seeing you. I glanced at my watch. 9:15 a.m. Earlier than I'd expected, but Nathan had never been known for his patience. Give me 5 minutes, then send him up, I replied, turning to my computer to pull up our network's expansion plans. I wanted all my ammunition ready for this conversation. Nathan burst through my office door precisely 4 minutes later, his face flushed and his hospital ID badge askew. He stopped short when he saw my office, his eyes widening as he took in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking our newest medical complex. This is your office?" he asked, momentarily distracted from his anger. "One of them," I replied coolly. "I have others in Boston and Chicago. Please sit down." He remained standing, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "You have to stop this network expansion, Evelyn. You're going to destroy everything." "The only thing I'm destroying is outdated healthcare delivery," I said, turning my monitor so he could see the plans. The Mitchell Healthcare Network will bring advanced medical care to underserved communities, integrate specialty services, and improve patient outcomes across the region. Our projections show we'll serve over 1 million patients annually. But the hospital will remain exactly where it is. I cut him off. Though I imagine the competition might interfere with your equipment upgrade plans. He slumped into one of the leather chairs across from my desk. "Why are you doing this? Is it because Mom and Dad chose me?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Chose you, Nathan? They didn't choose you. They're rescuing you, just like they always have. The only difference is that they're using my inheritance to do it this time." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "No, it's not," I agreed. "But neither was watching you fumble through every medical venture they funded while they dismissed my healthcare innovations as little projects." I pulled up another document on my screen. Did you know that Mitchell Healthcare Group's annual patient volume is more than 10 times our family hospitals? That we employ over 500 physicians? That we have centers of excellence in 3 states? Nathan's face had gone pale, the color of a patient receiving bad news. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. Neither did Mom and Dad. They were too busy worrying about your latest failed medical device venture to notice what I was building. But why didn't you tell them? I leaned back in my chair, studying my brother. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of pity for him. Would it have made a difference? They've spent our entire lives seeing what they wanted to see. You were the son who needed their help, and I was the daughter who didn't. My phone buzzed. Another call from our father. I declined it without looking away from Nathan. I need this, Evelyn, he said quietly. Rebecca's pregnant, and I've got nothing else. That's where you're wrong, I replied, pulling out a folder I'd prepared the night before. You have options. You just never bothered to look for them. I slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a job offer. A real one, with a proper salary and responsibilities, not the made-up positions our parents had created for him over the years. Mitchell Healthcare Group needs a director of medical device procurement, I explained as he flipped through the paperwork. Someone who knows the equipment and understands vendor relationships. The salary is competitive, and there's room for growth if you prove yourself. He looked up, confusion written across his face. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to earn something on your own merit, I corrected him. No safety net, no special treatment. You'll report to our chief medical officer, not to me. If you succeed, it'll be because you worked for it. If you fail, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. And the family hospital? Keep it, I said. Run it however you want. But understand that healthcare is evolving, Nathan. In 5 years, medicine will be completely different. You can either change with it or get left behind. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the job offer. Finally, he looked up, and I saw something like respect in his eyes for the first time in years. When would I start? Monday, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. He nodded, clutching the folder like a lifeline. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. Evelyn, I'm sorry. For a lot of things. Prove it, I replied. Not with words. With actions. After he left, I finally checked my voicemail. 5 messages from our father, each more urgent than the last. The final one caught my attention. Evelyn, please, we need to talk about this. Your mother and I. We made a mistake. Can you come to dinner tonight? Please? I considered ignoring it, but something in his voice, a note of genuine regret I'd never heard before, made me reconsider. I texted back a brief reply. 7 p.m. I'll bring the network expansion plans. The day passed in a blur of patient consultations and board meetings. When I pulled up to the family hospital that evening, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the medical center's facade. My mother opened the door before I could swipe my access card, her face drawn with worry. Evelyn, thank goodness you came. The hospital boardroom was set for 3. No Nathan this time. My father stood as I entered, looking older than I remembered from yesterday. Before you say anything, he began, we need to apologize. I set my briefcase on the table, taking my usual seat. For what, specifically? For not seeing you, my mother said quietly. For not understanding what you've built. We've been so focused on helping your brother. We failed to recognize your achievements, my father added. When I saw those healthcare network plans yesterday, Evelyn, why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened? I asked. Or would you have dismissed it as another little project? They exchanged guilty looks. We've been researching your medical group, my father said. We've seen the patient outcome statistics, the quality metrics, the innovation awards you've won. You've built something remarkable, and we were blind to it. And now? I asked, opening my briefcase. Now that you can't ignore it anymore? Now we want to understand, my mother said. We want to know about your work, your vision for healthcare. Everything we should have asked about years ago. I pulled out the expansion plans and spread them across the table. Then let me show you what I'm building. For the next 2 hours, I walked my parents through the Mitchell Healthcare Network plans. Their questions, hesitant at first, grew more thoughtful as the evening progressed. I saw genuine interest in their eyes for the first time as I explained the intricacies of integrated care systems and patient-centered protocols. This outpatient-centered design, my father said, pointing to the architectural renderings, it actually complements our existing medical facilities rather than competing with them. That's intentional, I replied, allowing myself a small smile. We're not erasing traditional healthcare. We're evolving it. The network celebrates established medical excellence while creating infrastructure for future innovations. My mother touched the plans gently, tracing the interconnected care pathways and clinical corridors. It's remarkable, Evelyn. All these years, we thought you were just, well, playing at being a doctor administrator. Following a whim, I finished for her. She had the grace to look embarrassed. We were wrong. So wrong. The hospital. My father began carefully. We made that decision without understanding the full picture, without understanding you. I leaned back in my chair, studying them both. The past 24 hours had shaken their worldview considerably. The daughter they'd underestimated had turned out to be more successful than they could have imagined, while the son they coddled had accepted a position working for his sister. Nathan told us about the job offer, my mother said, as if reading my thoughts. That was very generous of you. It wasn't generosity, I corrected her. It was business. The position needed to be filled, and Nathan knows medical devices. Whether he succeeds or fails will be entirely up to him. You're giving him a chance to prove himself, my father observed. Something we never did. Every time he failed, you were there to catch him, I couldn't help adding. He never had to face the consequences of his decisions. They exchanged guilty looks again. The truth of my words hung heavy in the air, like the silence after delivering a difficult diagnosis. We'd like to make it right, my father said. The hospital. It should be yours. It always should have been. I stood up, gathering the plans back into my briefcase. No. No? They both echoed, startled. The family hospital belongs in the past. Just like your assumptions about me and Nathan. Let him have it. Let him learn to be responsible for something on his terms. But it's your inheritance, my mother protested. I gestured toward the expansion plans. This is my inheritance. Not the one you chose for me, but the one I built for myself. The one that matters. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an email. I glanced at it and smiled. Excuse me, I have some good news to share with my team. The state medical board just unanimously approved our network accreditation. My father stood up. Evelyn, wait. There's something else we need to discuss. I paused at the boardroom door, briefcase in hand. Your mother and I. We've been talking. The hospital isn't our only asset. There's the Medical Research Foundation and some satellite clinics in Maine. Keep them, I said firmly, or give them to Nathan. I meant what I said. I've built my own legacy. We know that, my mother said softly. But we were hoping, would you consider a strategic partnership with our hospital? Not as parents trying to control things, but as healthcare providers who recognize a brilliant opportunity when they see it. I hadn't expected that. You want to integrate the family hospital into Mitchell Healthcare Network. If you'll have us, my father said. We've spent years investing in the wrong child's future. Let us be part of yours. On your terms. I studied them carefully, looking for any sign of manipulation or control. Instead, I saw something new. Respect. Maybe even a hint of pride. Finally, I said, I'll have my integration team send over the partnership proposal. You can review it and make your decision based on medical outcomes and operational synergies, not family ties. They nodded, understanding the boundary I was setting. As I drove home that night, I thought about how much had changed in just 2 days. The family hospital, which had once represented everything I thought I wanted, now seemed small compared to what I'd built. My parents, who had spent years dismissing my achievements, were asking to join my healthcare network. And Nathan, who had never had to earn anything, was facing his first real opportunity to prove himself. The next morning, I arrived at my office early. Sarah was already there, organizing the day's patient schedules. Your brother called, she said. He wants to know if he needs to review any protocols before Monday. I smiled. Tell him to focus on our standard procurement procedures. And Sarah, make sure his orientation includes every detail of our quality control standards. No shortcuts. Of course, she replied. Oh, and the construction team for the new medical center wants to confirm the groundbreaking ceremony. They suggested next month, but make it 2 weeks, I decided. It's time to start building. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, reviewed the partnership proposal. Impressive integration plan. Can we schedule a meeting with your CMO? I typed back, next week. And Dad, bring your questions. All of them. Setting my phone down, I walked to the window. From here, I could see the medical complex where our family hospital stood, where my vision would soon reshape healthcare delivery. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above, building higher, and reaching further than anyone thought you could. Sarah's voice came through the intercom. Mitchell, the department heads are ready for the morning briefing. On my way, I replied, straightening my white coat. There was work to be done. A healthcare network to build. And a future to shape on my terms. 3 months later, I stood on the podium at the new medical center's groundbreaking ceremony, surveying the crowd. Local officials, healthcare leaders, and community members filled the rows of chairs. In the front row, my parents sat straight-backed and attentive, their faces beaming with a pride I'd never seen before. Nathan stood off to the side in a well-fitted suit, tablet in hand, professionally directing the facilities team. These past months had revealed a side of my brother I'd never known existed. When stripped of our parents' safety net, he'd discovered a work ethic that surprised us all. Today marks not just the beginning of a new medical center, I began my speech, but the start of a new chapter in healthcare delivery for our community. Mitchell Healthcare Network will bridge traditional medical excellence with innovative patient care. As I spoke, I caught glimpses of familiar faces in the crowd. The community physicians who'd initially opposed the network integration, but had come around after seeing our patient care protocols. The medical board members who'd scrutinized every detail of our plans before giving their unanimous approval, and the healthcare teams who'd helped bring my vision to life. This medical center represents more than just a building, I continued. It represents a commitment to excellence, growth, and the power of embracing change while honoring our medical traditions. My father shifted in his seat, and I knew he understood the deeper meaning of my words. After their initial partnership with Mitchell Healthcare Network, my parents had thrown themselves into learning about integrated care delivery with an enthusiasm that made up for years of indifference. They'd attended medical staff meetings, asked thoughtful questions, and finally begun to see me as the physician leader I'd become. In particular, I added, departing from my prepared remarks. I want to thank our medical device procurement team, led by Nathan Mitchell, for their outstanding work in ensuring this facility will have the most advanced equipment while maintaining cost efficiency. Nathan's head snapped up in surprise. He hadn't expected the recognition, but he'd earned it. Over the past 3 months, he'd worked tirelessly, arriving early and staying late, learning every aspect of healthcare operations. He'd transformed vendor relationships through sheer determination and genuine concern for patient outcomes. After the ceremony, as construction workers began the symbolic first dig, my mother approached me with tears in her eyes. "Evelyn," she said, taking my hands in hers, "I don't think I've ever been more proud, not just of what you've built, but of who you've become, and who you've helped others become." "He's done that himself," I corrected her. "All he needed was the chance to try." Later that evening, I hosted a smaller celebration in my penthouse apartment. As Nathan helped distribute champagne, I noticed how differently he carried himself now. Confident, but not arrogant, proud, but humble. "I never thanked you properly," he said, joining me on the balcony. "Not just for the job, but for believing I could be more than what I was." "You proved me right," I replied. "The vendor relationships you've built are invaluable to the network." He smiled, looking out over the city lights where several of our medical centers glowed in the distance. "You know, I used to be so jealous of you, even before I knew about awe." He gestured at the healthcare complexes dotting the skyline. "I knew you had something I didn't. Purpose. Direction. I just didn't want to admit it. And now? Now I understand what you've been trying to tell me all along. Success isn't about what you're given, but what you earn yourself." I could hear our parents talking animatedly with some of my executives, enthusiastically discussing future healthcare innovation possibilities. The family hospital, once the center of all our drama, had become just another valued partner in a growing network of care. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Boston Center reports Phase 2 ahead of schedule. Chicago team wants to move up the timeline for the pediatric unit." I smiled, typing back a quick response. The healthcare network I built was growing, expanding beyond anything my family had imagined possible. But more importantly, it had become a catalyst for change, not just for patient care, but for my own family. Dr. Mitchell, one of the medical directors, approached with a tablet. "The international team is ready for their video call about the London expansion." I nodded, turning back to Nathan. "Duty calls?" he said with a knowing smile. "Go change healthcare somewhere else. I'll handle things here." As I headed to my home office, I passed our parents deep in conversation with my chief medical officer about innovative care protocols. My mother caught my eye and gave me a subtle nod, a gesture of respect from one healthcare leader to another. The family hospital had once represented everything I thought I wanted: acceptance, validation, a connection to our medical heritage. But in losing it, I gained something far more valuable: the freedom to create my own legacy, the respect I had earned rather than inherited, and a family that finally saw me for who I was. Settling into my chair for the video call, I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, taken just last week, showing my family standing together at the new medical center site. It wasn't the perfect family portrait we'd once tried to project, but something better: a genuine image of who we'd become. "Ready for the London team?" Sarah asked from the doorway. I smiled, turning to my computer. "Always ready. Let's build something extraordinary." After all, that's what I do best. Not just building medical centers, but also bridges, opportunities, and new beginnings. The family hospital might have been my childhood dream, but this healthcare empire of possibilities, was my destiny.